Hey everyone, this is Hunter with Hines Hide Leather Co. And today I have a review of these nice Sinabroks pricking irons, as well as this beautifully made Berry King mallet. And I got both these items from buckleguy.com. If you're unfamiliar with Buckle Guy, it's a nice leathercraft supplier. I want to go ahead and state that I'm not sponsored by any of the companies mentioned in this video. It's purely just a review for you guys. So I wanted to start off with the pricking irons. And if you're familiar with leathercraft or you just want the review, you can go ahead and skip this part. But if you're new to leathercraft, the difference in a pricking iron and a different type of stitching punch is mainly the teeth. So on a nice pricking iron, you're going to have a more defined line with more straight cuts. And I'll show you what that looks like later. But basically, a pricking iron is going to make a more defined line that typically you have to go through with an awl. On these nice Sinabroks, you don't have to do that just because of how long the teeth are and how polished they are. But I'll show you an example of what a diamond chisel looks like. That's what I would recommend for a beginner, and that's what I started out with. These are a nice set from Craft. Now this is going to be a cheaper option for you, and these did very well for me. As you can see, this is one of the first things I made, so it's a little iffy, but it still worked well and it's held up. But this is basically a diamond chisel, and it's going to have these teeth, and these make a more defined hole, which allows you to easily saddle stitch or hand stitch, whatever form of stitch you prefer on your leather. The reason that I replaced these is that after 2 years, the teeth have kind of worn out on me, and they're still a nice set, but they're definitely nothing compared to Sinabroks. Typically, the teeth would only wear out if you're using them incorrectly, and I'll show you the proper usage once we go to test out our chisels, but you want to make sure that they're on a surface that's not going to damage these teeth. So on a set like this, you can't replace these teeth, but on a Sinabroks, all you have to do is go through and replace them. That being said, if you're a beginner, which you probably are if you're watching this portion of the video, you're gonna want something more like this that's cheaper rather than going with something like Sinabroks, unless you just have the money for it. But let's get onto the actual Sinabroks review. You can see that this comes in a beautiful package. It's very safe while it's traveling in this nice snug little case, and as you can see, this is a beautifully made tool as well. They've put their maker's mark right there, and because I got it from Buckle Guy, they've gone and put their mark on there as well. But they've also marked the size here. If you can see that, I got 3.85 millimeters. That's what I prefer. But this is the pricking iron, so it's got these straight and more defined teeth. And on this Sinabroks chisel, those teeth are perfectly straight. They're also very well polished. You're going to want something that's polished if you're pulling out of your leather. And I'll show you the difference in something that's less polished than this, just so that you know what that looks like. So I also got the 2-prong as well as the 1-prong pricking iron, and this is the 10-prong. This is a setup that I would recommend if you're just getting into Sinabroks. Now, a lot of people will say you don't need a 1-prong. On a pricking iron, I prefer to have a 1-prong, just if I ever have to make one punch, then that's going to match my other stitch holes. Whereas if I was using, say, a regular round hole stitch punch, then I could use a round hole singular punch, just say one that I use for belts or anything. But with a pricking iron, that hole's not going to match up. So if you have one that matches the pricking iron, that's going to make your product look much better. But let's go ahead and test these out using our Berry King maul. So once again, if you're new to leathercraft, you're going to want a granite block or something hard. I prefer a granite block just because it's hard to damage and it's a solid punching surface. I prefer to use something like a Weaver Poundo board on top of that. This just helps protect those punches. If you were to go straight into this board, that would definitely damage your stitching and all of your punches. So to protect those teeth, I recommend putting something like this. If you're just starting out, you probably have an extra plastic cutting board at home. You can use that as well. And I definitely recommend doing that if you're gonna make a solid punch. But I like to put an extra scrap piece of leather on here as well. That just helps protect the teeth even more, and also your actual leather product, even though this scrap piece is kind of beat up. If you put a piece like this on there, it's gonna help your actual product from being scratched. And this is a nice piece of double tan latigo. It's a little bit thicker, and I get this from a local tannery here in Tennessee. But as you can see, this is just a scrap piece of leather that we can go ahead and test out these beautiful pricking irons with our new Berry King mallet. And it's got this nice nylon head here, which will help make sure that we're not damaging the top of these pricking irons. It's got this brass here, and this is the 24-ounce mallet, and it's just enough weight that you're not wearing out your hand, but you're also able to punch straight through that leather. And it's got a nice leather handle for a good grip. Let's go ahead and test these out. I actually think I didn't even need that third hit there. As you can see, these went through that leather, and if I hit them again, they would have gone even further through. With a regular pricking iron, you're gonna need to awl through that, but these are just so well made that you actually don't need an awl. But they also come right out of that leather, and that's because of those polished teeth. They work beautifully, but let's look at that line. So as you can see, it's a very well-defined line. And it's nice and compact. That's just how I prefer. And that's what a 3.85 millimeter would look like. If you went higher, they're gonna be spaced out a little more. And that's mainly up to personal preference, but let's go ahead and see what this diamond chisel would look like in comparison. So to give these credit, these are 2 years old, so they're more worn out, but the difference is pretty outstanding. That still needs, okay, so that's in there. But this thing being 2 years old, even with sharpening, it does need some credit, but it's still, as you can see, very hard to pull out of this leather. And that's mainly because these teeth need to be polished. Now, I could polish these, and I have polished them in the past, but the straight out of the package polishing on these Sinabroks is far superior than what these ever were. So they've always been kind of hard to pull out, but they are good for a starter. And once again, if you're new to leathercraft, you can see the difference here. And I believe this is a 5 millimeter, but the difference here in the diamond chisel hole and the pricking iron. I prefer the beautiful look of these Sinabroks pricking irons.